Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. If you're here for the very first time, it's really nice to meet you and you're very welcome. I'm Jane and my husband Mike is behind the camera. We're British, early retirees, debt and mortgage free and living a thrifty, frugal and money saving life on a super tight budget here in Brittany in northwest France. And every Wednesday we open our home and invite you in for a midweek money chat. And this week, just as the title says, it's all about the cost of living crisis and how are frugal people coping. I often add this to the beginning of a video and it is essential that I do so this week. I talk about frugality as if it's the cure for everything, and I know and you know it isn't. Frugality does not cure poverty. If you are living on the margins of society, that you are barely getting by and you can't afford your rent and you can't put food on the table and you can't pay your bills, no matter how frugal you are, your circumstances are not going to be improved by frugality alone. Only improvements in income can do that. And it is also vitally important to acknowledge that not everybody can just go out there and earn more money. You might be too old, you might be too sick, you might have children, you might be widowed, you might be a widower. There might be a multitude of reasons why there isn't just an easy cure to all of that. I really do want to acknowledge the fact that at the moment, in just about every developed modern country that you can absolutely think of, there is at the moment a housing shortage. And because of that, rents are ridiculously higher than they've ever been. Houses are not being built at the rate that they are needed. The infrastructure of a lot of countries is on a slowdown at the moment. The investments are not being made, not just in the countries that I can think of here in Europe, but around the world as well. Food prices, we can all say they are at an all-time high for the people around at the moment. We can look at everything that is ridiculously high in price, from childcare, healthcare. I've got a list here. Everything from clothing to getting your hair cut to the amount you have to pay in a tip in some country for things like getting your hair cut. Just about everywhere and every country that I can think of at the moment, there is a cost of living crisis that is having a massive impact on everyone. And we are not immune. But I'm going to share with you today how we as frugal people have kind of been preparing for this for all of our lives and how we are coping with this. I'm going to start with sharing about us as people, and us as people is me, Jane, and my husband Mike. As people, we've always been reasonably thrifty people. We've never been big spenders. We've never had ideas of having fancy this or fancy that, or wanting to eat in restaurants, or wanting to wear posh clothes, or own expensive or fancy things. That's who we are. That's partly how we cope with the cost of living crisis, is that we're quite simple people, we're introverts, there's lots of things that other people might want to do, like eat out in restaurants, that we don't miss those things because we're quiet at home people. And I think it's part of who we are as frugal people. It helps us in all the times in our lives where there's been financial difficulties. When we were together 27 years ago, we did not have well-paid jobs. We were struggling with housing. We had my 2 children in the relationship, and all of those things it was not easy. So we've overcome those things because, as I said, we're introverts. We like being at home. We're not people who want to spend the money. And also, the important part to mention there, to help us through all of this, we are a couple. And as a couple, we've always earned the money. As a couple, we both have pensions. Now, as a couple, we both work together to earn money. That gets us through that. And I want to acknowledge, I think it's really important to acknowledge here, that it's really hard and extraordinarily hard at the moment for people who are on their own. start by talking about budgeting. As a couple, we've been well prepared for this cost of living crisis because we've always had to budget. We've never had spare money. We've never been the type of couple who've had enough money to just go and buy whatever we want. So we've always had to save and we've always had to budget. And in the past, like many people, we got ourselves into debt. Not doing anything extraordinary. We got ourselves into debt buying a car, and we got ourselves into debt doing up our house. So we didn't get into debt going on a cruise or anything like that. It was just on the nuts and bolts of living. So we've always had to budget. This is not new to us. And we know now that people are really having to live on a very strict, very tight budget. Now, we as a couple have always lived on a very strict, very tight budget. We haven't felt it as any kind of deprivation. It's who we are. It doesn't really matter to us as long as we're warm, we're clean, we're fed, we're happy, we have enough, and we've got a bit of money each month that we can put aside to save for the things that we're going to need later on. I want to share with you sort of the potted history of our life experiences and how they have trained us to be frugal and how they have prepared us for this cost of living crisis. First of all, this is not our first cost of living crisis. We're old enough to have lived through quite a few. We lived through galloping inflation in the 1970s in the UK, where an average family who were working were then struggling to pay the rent, pay the bills. I can remember as a family it was a struggle to buy coal to keep our house warm. Like a lot of British families, we couldn't afford to have hot water on demand 7 days a week. The great joke of you have to put the immersion heater on a Friday night for it to heat up for everyone to have a bath on a Sunday. So it was those things that we grew up being used to. We grew up being used to having one room heated and the rest of the house cold. It was not unusual for us growing up and people that we knew growing up to grow up in the winter with ice on the inside of the window. It was not unusual to go to the outside toilet and having to break the ice in the outside toilet. It was so cold, break the ice before you could use it. You'd have to have the water tank it was like a dunk dunk noise of the water tank for the outside toilet, because we have an inside toilet and an outside toilet. Only one bathroom in the house and another toilet was outside. That it was wrapped up in what we call lagging, so it didn't freeze, and all the water pipes being lagged so they didn't freeze. But you can't lag a toilet and it will freeze. Growing up with the experience of food being really expensive. So Mike grew up with both sets of parents growing food. So when it comes to times like now, that should we grow some food, the experience and the knowledge is there at our fingertips. We grew up where every single meal was made at home. We grew up where people didn't go out and eat. We grew up where you had hand-me-downs and second-hand cars, and our fathers fixed their own cars and our mothers cut our hair, and we saw our mothers on a Saturday night wash and set their own hair and put their own hair in rollers and put one of those sort of blow-up bags on their hair there's no going to the hairdressers. We saw our mothers do their own hair. I saw my mother make her own clothes and fixing our own clothes. So we grew up with all those experiences which well and truly prepared for all those cost of living crises. We've lived through boom and bust in the 80s. We lived through the financial crash of 2007. And now we're living through another time of real economic hardship. So through life experience, and I'm sure all those people who are living through this the first time now, it's something that's going to put them, unfortunately, in the state of preparedness for the next time. So as frugal people, and I think frugal people watching this will know that the biggest expense in your house next to your mortgage, your rent or your bills is going to be food. And it's the one area that at the moment that people are really experiencing difficulties in. But those who have been frugal for such a long time, and it's just part of who we are, we've been trained in this, haven't we? We've always set a food budget. That is our food budget. We've got to stick to it. We make it work. We have a meal plan and we stick to it. We don't go shopping without a list. We don't go shopping without knowing what is our meal plan. We don't go shopping before we've done a stock check in the house so we know what we've got. And when we do have money, we know to set a percentage aside. We set 10% aside for long-term storage. And we have our supermarket budget of €400 a month, and that is still considerably generous. But we make sure that every single month, 10% of that, €40 of that is for long term. And our supermarket budget is for all food, all drink, all toiletries, all cleaning products, all bathroom tissues, everything. So that might mean we take the €40 and I go to the store and I fill up my cupboard with pasta, rice, flour and durable food. Or it could mean I go to the store and I spend €40 on cleaning products and toiletries and loo rolls to see us through for the months ahead. But we're all used to doing this. When we lived in the UK, we were very, very well used to finding our food and home supplies from a multitude of shops, whether that was B&M, whether that was Home Bargains, whether that was Poundland, whether that was Aldi, whether that was Lidl. And we continue to do that now. We know where to go to get home products, for example, cleaning products that might be cheaper in Action. We might get some things such as dog food that's cheaper in another store, that we go and get meat that's on offer in another supermarket. We've been doing this for years and years and years. So when the cost of living crisis comes along, this isn't something new that we have to do. We just have to keep going with that. Like many people who are frugal, we don't eat out very often. Mike and I eat out on our wedding anniversary. If, like we did last year when we went and visited family in the UK, we ate out a couple of times. So last year we ate out 3 times. This year so far we've eaten out once. It's not something that we miss. It's not where we choose to spend our money. We don't feel deprived in any way. It's all about choices. And when it comes to food, we learnt it from our mothers, who learnt it from their mothers, and we taught it to our children. We're very used to taking the cheapest and most humble of ingredients and turning it into a tasty meal and taking those leftovers and making those into lunch for tomorrow. So let's talk about housing and running houses and the things that we've learned to do frugally over the years. I suppose, like I said to you, growing up, we were used to houses that weren't particularly warm. And so we've always had houses, especially when we lived in the UK. We didn't heat them that much. And in the summer, we had no air conditioning at all. And if you were hot, and you just got on with it. It's very much the same here in France. We don't heat the whole house. We don't heat our bathrooms. You get in the bathroom with a shower. The shower warms you up and get out again. But we don't cool the house in the summer. If it's hot, it's hot. It doesn't last. No, I'm not in a hot place. I'm not living in the centre of Portugal. It's not at over 40 degrees for 2 months on end. It's not at all. But what we've learnt with our houses, for example, is do not spend too much money on the decor. Keep it simple, keep it clean, furnish it as best we can second hand, and do what we can to keep it warm. And that's why in this house we've installed wood burners. It was the cheapest heating that we could put in. I know people watching us will say it doesn't apply to you, but don't forget we're sharing what we do and what we're allowed to do here. So we've always been really energy conscious. We've always made sure that we've used the least energy. As soon as LED light bulbs came out, we always had LED light bulbs. We've never, like I've shared with you, we've never heated, and we do not heat the entire house. We make sure that we don't have mold because we've insulated the house. We don't have any cold spots. We keep the place warm, we keep it cozy. We don't spend too much money on it. But don't forget, like I've said to you all the way along, it is our choice. We're not going without. So we have one car and we make it work. It's paid for. We have sinking funds that pay for new tyres and annual service. It's okay for us to have one car, but we need to share that we've always been frugal like that. We've either had one car or no car. At one stage, we could both get to work by public transport. It was affordable, or we could walk to work. At other stages in life, when we've changed jobs, we've both worked near each other. We've both taken the one car and gone together to get to work. We've even picked people up and colleagues up on the way to work and lift shared with them as well. So when it comes to us only having one car, and the cost of living crisis means we couldn't have two cars now, even if we wanted to have two cars, it's all right because we've got a lifetime of experience, the 27 years behind us. Like I said, we've only ever had one car or no car. Let's talk about the dreaded bills and all those extra expenses that we all have. Everything's gone up, not just for me, but for you and everyone everywhere. In that cost of living crisis, it's just that double whammy, isn't it? People's insurances have gone up, food has gone up, the cost of running a car has gone up, and all the bills in our house, they have gone up too. Well, we've been in training for this for years, and I'm sure frugal people watching this will agree with us. We've always watched our water consumption. We've always been extraordinarily mindful about our energy consumption. We are careful about the amount of wood that we use. We choose to have wood. It is still by far the cheapest way to heat our house here in France. And I know many of you share this where you live, that you can get wood as cheaply as you possibly can. Often it's off your own land, or there are ways and means of getting it cheaply. It is quite legal for us to do that here. We fully understand and appreciate that some of you do not have access to that, and we understand that. But we've always been mindful about our bills. We never just auto-repeat any insurances. We always take out insurance and make sure it is absolutely clear that this does not renew at the end of the year. We are mindful of when those renewals are coming up at about 8 months into the year, and then we start looking for the next load of insurance. We do not just let these things roll over. So this is not something new for us. I'm sure frugal people would agree with us on this, that we're really careful with all aspects of this. So when it comes to things such as the fuel in our car, we're really mindful about the journeys that we make. Can we go to the supermarket and get the dog food and go and get some materials that we need for the garden all in one trip? I'm sure you will agree with this. Leave me a comment below. Is this something that you've been mindful of for many years? It's rough out there, isn't it? It was rough for our grandparents living through the 1930s. It's rough for our parents who grew up as war babies, and then after the war, and rationing, and growing up living on bombed out cities, and the whole country having to start all over again. It's rough for Gen X like Mike and I, growing up in the 1970s and galloping inflation. It was rough for us in the 80s with high unemployment and low wages and opportunities and social structures disappearing in front of our eyes. We had a bit of a good time, and then, because this is not our first rodeo, we're back here again, aren't we? Hanging on for dear life. And we're watching our grown kids go through it. We're watching the millennials go through it. We're watching Gen Z go through this, aren't we? Having really, really rough times. We're watching young people unable to leave home, unable to afford rent, even though they've got good jobs. It is hard, and every generation, like Mike and I, like our parents, like our grandparents, like our grown kids, are learning new ways every single day to sharpen, to hone, to exact, to practice that frugal living. Because if we don't, my goodness, we'd never have a penny to put by. We'd never have anything spare to buy a new jumper. It's tough out there, and I really want to acknowledge that. And I want to go back to the very beginning and finish with this, that it's the roughest for those at the very bottom end of this who just don't have the choices. It is hard. Share with me. Maybe you can say to yourself, well, it's all right. We had it rough when we were young. We're practicing it now. We're living it again now. We're seeing our grown kids go through this. Share with me, because it is hard out there, and I really do want to acknowledge that. And I do want to acknowledge that we can be frugal to a level and it gets us through it, but it doesn't cure everything. It certainly doesn't cure everything. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who leaves a comment. We read every single one. Thank you to people who hit the like button. Thank you to all the subscribers, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.